Welcome to the Postpartum Coach podcast, where we embrace our needs as moms, we learn to lead ourselves first, then our families, and where we create our own healing from the inside out to find our way to the work we were meant to do in this world. I'm your host, a fellow mom of 3 and a certified life coach, Lizzie Langston. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Postpartum Coach podcast. Lizzie here. I am beaming. Like you can probably hear my smiling cheeks because I have a guest with us today that happens to be a client of mine. Her name's Elizabeth, and lo and behold, so is mine. What? So
I love it.
I know. So Lizzie and Elizabeth coming at you today. This is my dear client and friend. And so she and I are going to be chatting today about how she came into my coaching practice, what brought her to coaching, what it's been like for her, the changes she's been able to make. Because Elizabeth, you are about, 3 months in, maybe not even, to your coaching package? So
I think it might be less. I think it's like 2 months.
Yeah, probably.
It feels longer.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it feels like we've known each other forever, definitely. So we're going to be talking about everything you have created and all of the things that have helped you change the things you've wanted to and the pain points that brought you to coaching. And my hope for this episode is that all of us that are listening, any of you guys, that you just have hope and inspiration, especially if you've had any birth trauma. So without any further ado, I'm going to have Elizabeth, go ahead. Why don't you introduce yourself to everyone?
Oh, thanks, Lizzie, and thanks for having me here. It's an honor and privilege just to be asked to be part of this, something that I think I have a heart for now, which is motherhood and postpartum and especially trauma, which is a big part of my story.
Yeah.
But I'm Elizabeth. I live in Dallas, Texas. I'm 41 years old. Started my motherhood late in life because I met my wonderful husband late in life. So we've been married for 6 years. Always wanted kids. So we have 3 children, 2 here on Earth with us. We have a almost 4-year-old boy. His name's Gerard. We have a precious baby in heaven that I miscarried right after him. And then our 3rd child, Olivia, is 15 months old, and she's precious. And so very busy, but just like every mom, right? And I also work. So full-time job. My official title is a director of revenue management. So I work for a real estate firm in the country, and we oversee pricing of apartments. So I have a team of about 15, 16 people underneath me. So it's
Wow.
a busy job, and, part of what I've had to really try to manage, working as a mom and being a mom. It's 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah, it totally is. And I totally snuck over on Instagram. Sometimes you comment on my stuff, and I checked out your picture of you and your cute hubby. I saw a few pictures of your babies. That was so sweet. I'm so glad.
Thank you. His name is Jeff. We met on eHarmony. So we're
eHarmony success story.
Yes, it can be possible.
So good. Okay, so let's talk about life before coaching and what it was like for you. Tell us about it.
Life before coaching was it was hard. I would say that it was very dark. It was very heavy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like I had a lot of hope, which really bothered me. As I am a believer and a Christian.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
And it really has bothered me and really disturbed me that as a believer who believes in hope and believes that God does all things for good and believes that bad things happen to us all the time, right? And they're nothing that maybe we wish on ourselves, but we know that the promises of the Lord are good. I really struggled with, now that I'm a mother, that I've been struggling with postpartum for 3.5+ years, and it never left. And so my postpartum journey was started with my son. And, it intensified after my miscarriage. And then the delivery of my daughter, which had a lot of trauma to it, where I almost passed away immediately after the delivery. I felt like I walked around with hundreds of pounds of bricks on me. I would get up in the morning, my feet hurt, my body hurt. I felt like I could never have enough sleep. I felt like I could never make a decision. I snapped at my children. I snapped at my husband for no good reasons. I was okay just being home. COVID has happened this year, and I was so excited for COVID because I was tired of trying to put on the face that life was good. And even in things like, I'm going to update my Facebook, and I want to be encouraging to people and not be a Debbie Downer. And I think the reality that postpartum and the struggles that we as women carry physically and spiritually and mentally after a beautiful blessing has happened in our life, it's supposed to be a beautiful thing. And people are all like, oh, it's so great. Or don't you just love motherhood?
Yeah.
And there are many times where I was like, no, I don't.
I don't. I'm so glad you were honest.
I love motherhood.
Yeah.
And I felt like, am I a Christian woman because I struggle with motherhood? Like, does that make me doubt, my faith? And should I enjoy all those things? And so I would just say I felt very hopeless. There were several moments in the last year when I just cried out to God and thought, I need some mercy. I don't know if I can feel like this I'm 40, right? So I don't know if I can feel like this for 30 years.
Yeah.
Or 40 years. Mm-hmm. And my doctors also did not understand what was happening with my body.
Yeah.
And so that's a big story of mine, which is my body took a huge toll. I had some very hard major recoveries. But even in the last 6 months, they haven't been able to understand the pain I've been going through. And it just impacted all the joy that can be had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember specifically you saying that you felt so angry and so on edge so much of the time, and that you weren't typically like that. And so much time technically had passed since your baby had been born. But you had the first baby and then miscarriage and then your most recent child. And is there anything that you want to share or you feel like you can share about when you said you almost passed away? Is there anything that you kind of any details just to kind of broadly let people know what you mean by that?
Sure. Yeah, I'm comfortable sharing. I was in labor for, 18, 19 hours with my daughter. I did not know it was a girl at the time. We still wanted that to be something that we found out at delivery.
Oh, fun.
And it is fun. And throughout that delivery, we had a lot of complications, which we later realized that the cord was wrapped around her neck, which was causing a lot of the challenges. The delivery came, and it had to be almost like an emergency decision. They realized that they needed to get her out immediately. And the doctors agreed to use forceps to deliver her. And she was delivered safe. They realized while they're trying to deliver her that the complication was the umbilical cord. And so I'm so thankful, grateful that they realized that, because it could have been traumatic for her.
Yeah.
But she was delivered and delivered healthy and well and beautiful, and not even a scratch on her. I mean, praise God.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I suffered a lot. The forceps did some damage to my body, and I eventually I bled out.
Yeah.
And so it turned into a 2-hour process of saving my life. The room filled up. of doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And God was with them, and God was with us. My husband and I knew that I could pass.
Mm-hmm.
Very real. I will never forget that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think God answered prayers. I had prayed the whole delivery time for safety. Cannot tell you this feeling of immense knowledge that I had to pray for safety. And I prayed for safety for those 18 hours. Anytime I woke up or, as I dozed off with the epidural, I was praying for safety.
Yeah.
And he was present, and I was in the ICU after the delivery. So my husband and my daughter were separated from me for about 24 hours. I got to see them briefly. And I think eventually I required 13 units of blood transferred. Right after her delivery, I required 10. And then I needed a couple of more as I stayed in the hospital. Yeah. And the doctors say they had never seen anything like it. And they were astonished, and they were wonderful in our care, and also just claimed that there was a miracle that took place.
Absolutely.
That night for our delivery.
Oh, that's so beautiful and poignant. Thank you for sharing. I know tears welled up in my eyes as I heard you share. And I've shared here on the podcast that I also hemorrhaged postpartum after my first baby with preeclampsia and the magnesium that they had put me on to lower my blood pressure so I didn't have a seizure. And I didn't understand all that at the time though, right? And so I just knew that I was losing all this blood, and it feels like you're dying when you're losing that much so fast. And same thing, emergency button pressed, everyone ran in. So I'm with you on that. And I love that God brought us together. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you found me and what it was about my messaging or anything? What did you feel that prompted you to go ahead and book a consult?
I knew I needed to get better. I mean, I did not feel like me anymore.
Yeah.
And so I just was this version of this, angry, mad, upset, nothing seemed right. I didn't enjoy anything. And I didn't like who I've become. Yeah. It had been impacting my marriage, and it has impacted it. And my husband has been, gracious and kind and patient, but it has taken tolls on us. And, I saw it I saw it taking a toll on my parenting. I saw my son starting to behave in manners that, copied mama when mommy was mad and angry. Maybe throwing something across a room or being angry and yelling. Yeah. And I was like, oh, no.
Isn't that the trickiest part of postpartum recovery, especially when there's whether it's depression, anxiety, birth trauma, it's you need and want space to recover, and you're being watched constantly by these little eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, these little eyes.
And so the importance of getting you help, before or during or after it has done this little wave into your family life, into your marriage and your motherhood, it's just compounds. It's that much more worthy of an investment for a mother with all those eyes watching, like it or not.
Yes, the mommy's eyes are watching. And so I had worked with a couple of therapists, but they were very generic, and they helped me some, but I just realized I wasn't moving forward. And so I had been listening to a lot of podcasts. There's a lot of wonderful podcasts I listened to.
Good.
And just one day I just thought, I wonder if there's a postpartum podcast. There's got to be something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I pulled up my phone and said postpartum, and you popped up.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I do not know who Lizzie Langston is, but I'm going to listen to Lizzie Langston. And I was trying to listen to podcasts when my family wasn't around. So I remember this day clearly.
Yeah.
I finished work. My husband went to get the kids. I would be alone for 30 minutes. I was unloading the dishwasher. I started your podcast, and I thought, perfect. She's talking for 20 minutes. I have 20 minutes before the kids walk in the door, and the dishwasher will be unloaded.
Perfect.
I mean, that's just... Right?
That's so mom life, though.
And your podcast like struck me so hard. You talked about how anger shows up in postpartum and why anger is there. And then how to take away that anger and work towards being unangry. And I remember, and then you said, free consult. And I remember sitting there thinking, she understands me.
Yeah.
Because I also was having a hard time of people understanding me.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that. Because you were like hiding it from your family, you said, the podcasting.
Oh, yeah. My husband didn't know anything about it. I mean, I didn't tell him. But yeah, I think my husband has had a hard time understanding me. And not that he doesn't try to understand me, but he hasn't gone through this.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not in my body, and he doesn't know how I feel.
Yeah.
And then I think that there's just I've had a really hard time describing my postpartum experience because my story is so heavy that it literally would be too much for friends to listen to. Mm-hmm. It would be too hard for
almost
them.
Gruesome, like too scary, close to death. Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah.
And not that any of them did not want to hear it.
Right.
That's not it. It was too heavy and it was too much. So I found myself not really telling the story or worrying about how their reaction is. So it got to a point where when people was like, how was your delivery? I'm like, I don't want to go there. And so I would have these triggers of people asking me any mention of pregnancy or, is your baby formula fed or, breastfed would be any type of trigger. Mm-hmm. And nowhere where I have looked or talked to before coming to you, had I known of anyone who had any type of trauma with their birth. And so I felt a lot of shame with it, shame that I felt this way because I was alive. And that was even hard for me to explain, to friends. And people just move on. People's lives move on. So something traumatic happens in somebody's life. I think as humans at that moment, we are empathetic. And if we're in close community, we show up. But our lives move on. So people have other things going on in their lives. Yeah. Versus to say, how's Elizabeth doing and should I check in on her?
Yeah. And for them, it's like their ears hear your story and their brain thinks about it and they feel while those thoughts are there. You though, and I want everybody to hear this, if you've had birth trauma, your body stores this emotion and your body stores all of the trauma. It's in your body. And that's what we discovered. And we're going to talk about this later, but with your chronic pain that you were having, we really got to the bottom of that in a way that your doctors just they didn't know what to look for emotionally. So,
yeah. And I think when I found your podcast, I was past Olivia's birthday, which was so important for me.
That's your baby, right? Olivia?
Yeah, that's my baby. I think that's important for anyone who's had trauma is leading up to that first birthday. I think very, very, very difficult. I mean, at least for me.
Yes, it was for me too. Yeah, I remember.
I relived every moment. I mean, I was scared of that birthday and had some really dark thoughts leading up to that anniversary. And so I found you right after her birthday, and I just was so compelled. I was like, well, it's a free 16-minute consult. Like, it doesn't cost any money. I should just talk to her. And I felt led in the same manner that I felt led by praying for the safety of my delivery, that I should listen to you, because I was wanting that so bad I didn't realize it.
Yeah. I love that. I know we are in survival mode so much of the time that we don't, especially if you guys are working moms or run a business, it can be so easy to just kind of put this on the back burner. And what would you want to say to somebody who might be in that mode, who's busy kind of chasing their dream or just caught in the hustle, but they've got this in those quiet moments, they've got this pain and this trauma that they know is still there. And whether it's really showing up in daily life or not, what would you want to say to that?
I would just say that it's easy to put yourself on the back burner and to put everything else in front of you as your goals, especially as a mom, like you mentioned. Like, But what happens in that is that because we are not putting ourselves first, we're not able to be the mom or the wife or the friend or the daughter that we want to be. And I think when you aren't getting help in these areas, what you're telling yourself is that there isn't hope. At least for me. This was my story. I told myself there wasn't hope. I almost convinced myself this is how I would have to live the rest of my life. And I even wondered, could I be a grandmother? Will I be able to have energy being a grandmother? I mean, these are the things I've been thinking about. Like, will I be able to have good family vacations? I mean, just the things that you want to enjoy. And so I think for me, I had a deferred hope, and I think hope is real. And I have a burden now, and I've shared this with you, Lizzie. I have a burden for this postpartum journey, whether you've had trauma or not, that for the women that do suffer this, it is a very lonely place. And there is hope and there is community. I mean, while it's not the most popular thing on Instagram or Facebook or other social medias, or you're not going to find sitting at a baby shower, it is a reality that a lot of women suffer. And we can normalize it, and we can normalize it within the church. We can normalize it out the church. And we should be able to be brave enough as well to get the help. For me, it was very much of a brave act, and an act that said, I know I can be better. And I think I had personally hit like rock bottom with where things were. And at the same time, I also was realizing I needed to have a stronger walk with the Lord and run with the Lord more. So it really has been me spiritually investing more in my relationship with the Lord.
I love that.
And being more thankful and praying more and just the grace he's given to me, but also tangibly, prayer is not going to give you every answer that you need in life. You have to have someone tell you, like someone who's not you, and probably someone who's not a family person, right? Just say, hey, you're being a little negative here. Let's work through that.
Or what result is that thought creating?
Or what result, like you said to me, Lizzie, what result is that creating? And I was like, oh, right again.
And I think another thing I really teach my clients besides the thought thing, and I think this has been really pivotal for you in your journey, is understanding how to translate your body's pain into information and your body's communication to you, what it's needing from you. And I do have a gift with that. And plain and simple. And I think that's been so amazing for you because literally, so let's talk about that, right? So you did the consult, you signed up for coaching. And I remember the first thing I noticed is you would sit kind of funny in our sessions. And so we talked about your pelvic pain. You had this pain in your hips and your pelvis area. And so I have like my books and my resources, and I looked some things up, and we get to this point where, Elizabeth, you are literally turning your pain on and off. First of all, like you were able to control it when before you just were like, it's all the time. And it's so hard to sit and do my job. And then it was able to go away. And tell us about that. And specifically, I remember the baby shower. So, you hosted a baby shower for a friend, and that was like a huge breakthrough. So let's just talk about the physical pain right there.
The physical pain, I have been in constant pain for 14 months. My daughter's 15 months now. So it is pain. It was pain in my pelvic area. The doctors could not understand it. Everything healed finally. It probably took a year to heal, maybe a little bit more than a year.
But even after the healing, you had that lingering like flare-ups. Yeah. When you came and found me.
So, but the pain never went away after I healed. Like, so I couldn't sit without being in pain. I couldn't take walks. I couldn't carry heavy things, all of it. And it got to a point where the doctors were talking about alternative ways, like a nerve block or alternative ways to just try to minimize this pain and give me a quality of life. And so I'll never forget it. I remember you and I were working with this like body pain, emotional attachment. And I sat there and you said, I want you to close your eyes. And if your pelvic area was talking to you, what would it tell you? And I remember thinking the words, I am sorry. I did not protect you. And then you said, what is it that you want to tell back to it? And I said, I forgive you. It's okay. We are here. God protected us. And like immediately my pain flared up when I was thinking and telling you what my body was telling me. And immediately as I said the words of it is okay, God brought us through it. It went away. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting here, I'm crying. I still am astounded by that. Mm-hmm. And anytime we sit in a session and we talk about something around the trauma of my daughter's birth, I realize that the pain flares up. Mm-hmm. And then when we sit and we talk about it and we move to a gratitude of what God has done and a gratefulness, and which is always what I've wanted to be in, the pain goes away. And so what has happened is I not only have been able to move from this place of just angry and bitterness, but a place of just hope and joy. I feel, I've told you in the last couple of sessions, I feel like I'm flying. I mean, before I would get up every morning and I would have pain in my feet and my body would feel heavy. And I feel like I'm carrying around hundreds of pounds. And now I feel like I'm just floating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have. And I remember your posture in our sessions changed and your energy and even your voice. I mean, I personally can hear it in people's voices very quickly. But yeah. So different when that, when our body's able to let go. But it's like it has to tell us something sometimes first. And vice versa. Like there has to be that closure. Like we forgive the doctors, we forgive our child for bringing this upon us, if that's your story, or we forgive our husbands for not or the birth plan wasn't followed. But ultimately there's this piece with our body and it's so intimate and so sacred. It's so sacred and beautiful.
It is beautiful. I'm just so grateful for that day when I was inclined to find a podcast and I think just the message. I think what I heard in your voice was, I know how to manage this for you when you don't. And there was a reassurance in your voice. Yeah. And there always is a reassurance in your voice and just a lot of, I think a lot of safety I felt at the moment, even in that very first session when I was like, I don't know if I want to talk to her, like it's a lot to be vulnerable and to bring down the walls and share the emotions you're feeling.
Yes. Yeah. So, what I want to say is this is how it goes with everyone, which is that you have a pain point and you listen to the podcast or one of my free outlets, Instagram, and it speaks to you. And maybe even you shed some tears, or there's just like this little window peak of hope that enters in. And what you do with that, you guys, is totally up to you. But I just want you to beware, because the same thoughts that are keeping you stuck are the same thoughts that your brain is going to employ to want to keep you from reaching out and getting help with me. It's the same stuff. So the same thoughts that are telling you you're never going to get better, of course, are going to be the same thoughts that are going to say, don't do that. That's too big of a thing for you, or that's too, or you're never going to be able to do it, or, you won't feel this or that. And so just notice that voice in your head. And I'm so grateful also, Elizabeth, that you were, even though in that first session and moving through past the consult, you were nervous, you were committed. I think that's really my clients. They are committed to the result they want to have. So you wanted to be pain-free. You wanted to forgive your doctors. That was a big one at first. You had a lot of anger there, and your body did too. You wanted to forgive them, to forgive God, and you wanted to feel gratitude. And now where we're going is now the marriage piece and the motherhood piece. But first we just had to get you and your past and the emotions. And now the rest just feels so much easier and lighter.
It is. Yeah, because our conversations now is just like, you're like, you open up the session and you say, what do you want to talk about today? And instead of me sitting there saying, no, you tell me what we're talking about, I'm bringing it to you.
Yeah.
And move and really have been able to make, I think, a very strong correlation in the journey after each session. It's like I can correlate it all together and almost have put in practice moving forward without you having to prompt me. But you're still, every session, you're like, no, we need to talk about how you reacted to this, or we need to think through, like, how is that setting you up successful for having a negative thought? And so, I mean, it's all intertwined. You can't remove your emotions without it infecting every part of your life.
Yeah. So I guess to wrap up this portion of this interview, and then we'll move into the next one. I just wanted to say that I really do think that the success here, and this is for available to anybody, is you get a vision of what you want your life to be like, even if you don't think it's possible yet, or you doubt it to some degree. This is what Elizabeth did, is she had this, after listening to the podcast, it sounds like you had this idea, I can be better. And you were unwilling to settle into this forever. And you were very just stern about, like, no, I can get better. And I just want to offer that you thinking that is the reason that coaching has been so valuable to you. And you've been able to get the results you have is because you are fixed in hope and in belief that you can heal. And look at you doing that. You're literally, your brain and your body are working together to completely heal the emotional and physical wounds there. And you're being free in the way that you wanted to. And we're just getting going. And it's only like month 2. So I want to celebrate you and congratulate you, Elizabeth, for the way that you come to coaching. And if any of you guys are like considering this, just know that that's all you really need, is a vision of the life you want to have and a belief that you can have it. And when that's in you, coaching will work for you. Absolutely. And I'm here to help you guys. So what's something you want to share with everybody, like as a closing remark, anything you want to tell the moms?
Yeah, I think I just want to share, like what you just said, which is, don't give up for yourself. And that, I think really the message is, and I feel so strong with this, that my message in this story, and maybe a reason why I went through this, is for me to just share that there is hope after such hardship with pregnancy or miscarriages or trauma or close to a loss of life and postpartum in general. And when I was in the ICU, separated from my daughter, this verse really came to me, and I have claimed it as my life verse, and I have claimed it for my family's life verse. And it is Jeremiah 29:11-13, which is, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, and they're plans to prosper you and not to harm you, and plans to give you hope and a future. And that you will be called upon and come to pray to me, and I will listen to you, and you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. And that first part of that verse is just something that I have just claimed. And this coaching session, this has been a big part of a support of what the Lord was telling me in the ICU. And this journey has been scary, and it has been heavy, and it has been hard and dark, but there has also been a lot of beauty in it. And I feel like I have risen and finally come across where I have the darkness is behind me. I don't feel like the darkness is in front of me anymore. Mm-hmm. And that I want for every woman to know, or even if you're listening to this and you know someone who's going through postpartum, and this is just you're trying to figure out how to help somebody, there is hope for them.
Yeah.
They can't get through this.
Yeah. And they could be doing what Elizabeth did for a while, which was kind of not really share all of it with her friends, because she was like, it felt so big and she didn't want to be weighty and heavy on people. And so if you know somebody had a really traumatic birth experience, but they seem to be okay, it might just be a good idea to pass this along regardless, because you don't know what their internal suffering is like.
That is right.
Yeah. That's so beautiful, Elizabeth. I remember when you first came to me, you could hardly talk about this. And to see you, I got a little emotional just watching you, on the other side of 2 months of coaching, to see you so eloquently and graciously and generously share your story, and then be able to have the emotional capacity to hold yourself through those details and to reach out and extend love and support and help to others and hope, is such a beautiful sight to me as your coach. So congrats. And thanks for being here with us.
Thank you, friend.
Of course. All right, you guys, LizzieLangston.com/consult if you want to work with me, and we will talk to you next week. Take care, everyone.